What would you like the power to do? Bank of America.
Good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate the chamber letting us do this little experiment where I'm going to moderate a conversation with Ned.
No, I'm moderating.
Ned's going to moderate a conversation with myself, and we're going to see how it goes. We forgot to put the title in this as opposed to just a one-on-one conversation. So we're going to talk about trust as infrastructure and where we are and where we need to go. And the origins of where Ned and I started talking about this is I work at Michigan Central, and I get this really great opportunity to work at the station, to work at New Lab, these like truly inspiring buildings. And I should be coming to work just feeling that way, but like in the fall, I was just having like this cycle of negativity, right? Internal meetings, external meetings, always negative. And it was just like, all right, is this me? And so my friend who used to work for me in the mayor's office, who's in from New York, who does a lot of innovation, economic development in New York City, came in and I was like, hey, what have you seen? And she's like, same thing. And I was like, do you ever get that in New York? And she's like, no. And it's because New York is just such a big city that like these small little cuts don't impact the idea of being able to make big things happen. So I was just like, well, we can either grow to size in New York or we can start to fix this problem. And this problem is everything from little gossipy things here to people talking bad about people. And I'll be really transparent. Like Ned and I do this stuff, right? Like we are friends. We will text during meetings about what's going on in the meeting. We will gossip, but like we have trust, right? And this trust allows us to be an ability to say like, this is how we're going to get this out and work it out. But when we don't have that, right, and you've got these things and they just keep adding up and these paper cuts and these paper cuts and these paper cuts to the point where we're really bleeding, right? And it starts to really hamper the ability for people then to put out big ideas and to put out bold, transformative things because of all this culture. So, Ned, let me start with you. You hear trust as infrastructure. What does that really mean to you? And then, where have you seen that lack of trust really play out?
Well, the first place I see lack of trust is in this room. Y'all in the back need to, hold it down. All right, that didn't work. So it was worth a shot, though. But seriously, trust is a necessary currency for really anything. From an individual deal, are you going to buy something or transact something, all the way out to an ecosystem, all the way out to the global economy. If you don't have trust, it just won't happen. And we put a lot of structures in place to try and create those sets of trust. But ultimately, it's going to come down to individual actors. So the number of times I've seen people try going into an interaction and they try to pre-litigate, put out on a piece of paper all the potential scenarios that could happen, and they're going to say, if this happens, this is what we'll do, and if this happens, this is what we're going to do. And that leads to lots of friction points, and often those deals never happen. And often what I'll tell people is, that was probably a good thing. Because if you can't trust somebody enough to say, we're going to start moving down this road, and if something like that comes up, we're going to work it out, maybe you shouldn't have been in business with them in the first place. Because ultimately, it is all about the ability to work with someone, understand that you have common goals, and that even if things get a little bit hard or a little scary, you're going to keep working towards them. That allows you to keep moving in that direction. And I'm going to tell a story, and I asked Mark if I could, because I was a little nervous that maybe he would be like, bro, don't tell that story here. But it goes back to when Michigan Central and New Lab were first sort of coming onto the scene in Detroit 3-4 years ago. TechTown's been here for 20 plus years. We've been sort of the OG. We've been doing this for forever. And one of the things, and I know a lot of you in this room are going to relate to this, is it gets frustrating when folks are like, nobody here is any good. We suck. We need to go bring somebody in from the Valley or New York or whatever to tell us dumb Detroiters how to do stuff, right? And when Michigan Central and New Lab were kind of getting stood up, there was the sense in the ecosystem that that's kind of what was happening. That the 10 or 15 organizations like TechTown that were already here weren't doing it right, were failing. And we were like, bro, give us some resources. We've been blah, blah, blah. And instead you're giving to these new people to come in. So when they first got here, there was a bit of tension, right?
A bit's an understatement, but yes.
Yeah, basic understanding. I mean, at one point I remember talking to a potential funder of theirs and be like, don't do it. Why would you do that? Give the money to the people here that are actually doing the work already. And our initial meetings about this, before Mark was there, full disclosure, were I would say, adversarial. And over time, we built up a relationship, and a lot of it came when Mark came in, and we were able to build a level of individual trust. We sat down in a conference room one day and we mapped out, what do you do? What don't you do? What are you good at? What do you suck at? What do we do? What are we, the whole thing. And we found the points where like, great, you do this, I'll do this, we'll communicate about this stuff here in the middle. And since then, that translated into a 28-point MOU, I think, because the lawyers want to write down everything on paper. But a big chunk of it is just, we're going to keep working together. These are our goals. We're going to keep talking. And it has led to, yesterday we put a joint funding proposal in together that got funded. So now we can just eat caviar and, no, not it, how it's going to work. But because we viewed it not as a shrinking pie that I needed to get my part of, and not, letting him get his, but how can we grow this pie together? So, a lot of what you guys are doing is bringing entrepreneurs in from other places and trying to grow them here. And, entrepreneurs are often very attracted to that kind of culture. So if you were starting something here, if you were growing your own business, what is it you'd like to see in that culture here in Detroit?
Yeah, I would like to see, but just talking to so many folks that have come here from places like, New York and Texas, they want to see, that there's a hustle and a hard work, right, that they can be rewarded. They want to see that people are helpful, and they want a level of honesty, right? And we do the first two super well, right? Like, if somebody is coming here, the ability to start to open doors for them, make relationships, to just see that like we're going to outwork a lot of other people. So we don't have to touch those first two. It's the third that we kind of a lot of times get hung up on, right? Where we have challenges. Every place has challenges. But because we haven't made progress on those challenges, we often sort of sugarcoat them. And whether, it's somebody from New York to ask about transit, right? Which is a conversation I've had multiple times, to talking about education, to talking about an economic development toolkits. And, they'll come here and they'll be like, this is not what I was expecting, right? And it just creates this vibe of, I would have rather just been able to know exactly what I'm doing, exactly what I'm going into, as opposed to, I got sold a bill of goods and some of this is good, but it's not everything that I want it to be. Versus saying like, yeah, this isn't as good as it needs to be, but here's what's happening, right? Like here's the leadership that's happening, here's the ways that you can begin to get involved, and having had that. That said, I think, want to talk about what the Chamber and University of Michigan have been doing over the last almost year and a half right now to put together this economic development corridor here. Again, when it started, it was rough, right? And it was rough because there was a lack of trust, where there was an announcement and poor Glenn Stevens had to go talk to a lot of people to explain it after the fact versus before the fact.
Dig into that. It's a great story. It was an announcement about Ann Arbor and Detroit coming together to do something, and literally, we were sitting there and I'm like, do you know about this? And he said, no. Do you know about this? I said, no. We were sitting next to the city of Detroit's economic development person. We're like, do you know about this? No, right? So it was an announcement. It was the proverbial tail wagging the dog, right?
Yeah. And that said, right, like knew right off the bat that was where the work had to do, and had an uphill battle. But just seeing what they've been going to put together to say like we're going to do work, right? And there's a lot of people in the room, and not everybody is going to be there to say like we're on board on this, or how does this help me? But to just see the leadership to say like this is a big swing that we need to make. Nobody else is taking that big swing, so we're going to go out and do it. And we don't have enough of those efforts, and we don't have them because of all these things that exist in the background. And I think that's like macro, but then you just like get into the micro things. And just these little paper cuts of, Ned and I have a meeting with a bunch of other people, we talk about something, and then after the meeting, somebody's just like, that was garbage, right? Versus saying in the meeting, to me, that was garbage, so we could have a conversation about these things. And it's just like, this culture is kind of what creates this overall tax. And question to you, Ned, and it's just, we've created a culture where being able to deal in the gossip and deal and be, essentially put people down, right, is a way to make your way up. Yeah. So how do we begin to start to look at rewarding builders as opposed to those people that are just doing commentary.
Yeah, you use the word rewarding. I think that's important because it is a stick and carrot kind of situation that I'm going to talk about. So, the first is I think there's a series of carrots, that you can throw out there, and there's some structural things. So, whether you are the city, the state, a philanthropic organization, or the federal government, you can say, if you want to get these dollars, you need to partner with several other people in the ecosystem, or you need to connect across other ways. And there's some examples of that I think make a ton of sense. The MEDC came up with the Small Business Support Hubs program. We partnered at TechTown with, 4 or 5, 6 other people to create a hub on that. The federal government has the Tech Hubs program, or the NSF Engines program, or the Building Back Better Regional Challenge program that are basically forcing you to partner with other people. And so you can put those things in place. But ultimately, it's going to come down to individual leadership and execution on being willing to do it. And you mentioned transit earlier. So I'll give the transit example because, the federal government told the state of Michigan 15 years ago, if you don't have a regional transit authority, we're never going to give you any money. So the federal government said that to us. You guys are disjointed across Southeast Michigan. You need to get your act together. So we put that together, right? And then 10 years ago, we said, okay, now we need to actually fund this thing and go after federal dollars together, et cetera, et cetera. But here's an example where that trust started to break down because of lack of leadership among individuals. There was a higher power organization, the federal government, saying, thou shalt partner together. But then every one of the partners was so concerned about getting their dollar back. I can't go to my taxpayers in fill-in-the-blank county if they're going to pay $1 of tax money and they don't get at least 85 cents of it back, or whatever the number was, right? And so at that point, you start negotiating about, well, how do we put something in place to make sure you get your 85 cents back? And we got to put a whole structure in place to account for that, and this and that. And by the time you've done that, you put $1 and you put $1 and you put $1. There's $3, but we're only spending $2 on transit because we're spending $1 trying to account for the fact that we're doing, and in the end, it never makes sense, and the deal all kinds of falls apart. So ultimately, it's going to come down to individuals executing. Everything in life, people always say, what's the right structure, internal, external, this and that. There's no right structure. There's no right strategy. It comes down to leadership and execution. That's it. They say, oh, strategy trumps whatever, blah, blah, blah. Leadership and execution are the only things that matter. People say to me all the time, hey, Ned, I got $1 million idea. I'm like, you done anything about it yet? You don't have $1 million idea. I had $3 million ideas in the shower this morning. They're all worthless until we actually execute on them, right? Yeah. So we're gonna talk about what individuals need to do. Mark, it's 2026. It's January still for another hot minute. What are you going to do this year to be a leader in demonstrating some trust?
So I have bad ADHD. So it is very hard for me to sit in a meeting and just do this. So when a keyboard is in front of me, I often like to type on said keyboard during said meeting and give all of my thoughts to be able to relieve said ADHD. So I am done doing that. I am done texting Ned during meetings.
But I like your text. Come on, man.
Investing in some more fidgets so that I'm able to focus and say, I don't agree with you, right? I don't, or I just don't understand what you're saying, or why are you doing that? And not in a way where I'm coming to say, like, I'm standing up and saying, your idea is terrible, my idea is good. But to just, be able to have this conversation. And I might walk out of that room saying, like, I still don't agree with you, but you're going to know it, right? And hopefully that makes your idea better. Because I think that also becomes the challenge, is when we all just say everything's great, we don't pressure test. And as a person who spent a lot of time trying to figure out those transit numbers and came up with a mess of a plan, you show it to anybody and it's like, that's terrible. It's because you didn't sort of get that feedback. So what about you?
First of all, I hope instead of texting me, this is stupid or whatever, you do pop onto the screen and say, guys, we already did this 10 years ago, or we didn't, because
there's that too.
I think that is super important. And for those of us who are kind of old and been around doing this for a couple decades, it can be frustrating to have people say, you know what we should do? And we're like, oh, bro, we used to do that for years and years. Anyway, mine is going to be, I'm going to practice what I preach. So I talked about there should be structures that incentivize you to go after things together. And my development people are over there. I'm probably sure they're not going to be happy when they hear me say this, but I'm going to commit to not going after a grant by ourselves if we can realistically go at it with a partner. And we're going to bring other people, and we will, like an accordion, scale up and down the sizes of what are asked to make it work. But I really do believe that 2 + 2 can be 5, and that we can grow this together if we get out of the scarcity mindset. So I'm going to try and find ways to do things with other groups.
That's awesome. Please call the two of us out on this as much as you like.
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
That's super important, and we got a little bit of time. So
Yes.
I want to say that, like, that's a part of the culture.
Ned was not supposed to say we have a little bit of time and go beyond, but keep going.
I see time. That's a part of the culture. I think people are often very afraid to be told what they're doing wrong. You know, we as a group, oh, that's not right, that's not whatever. We need to get over that, because part of the trust is just assuming that you're on the same side as I am. We're all on the same team. They're all pulling in the same direction. And the same direction is whether it's a meeting about transit or entrepreneurial corridors or education or whatever. We all want better outcomes, right? We all want this to go well. And so when I say, hey, this isn't going to work, or I'm critical of what we're doing, it's not because I'm trying to tear it down or stop it. It's because I really want there to be better outcomes. So feel free, please tell me every day all the stuff I'm doing wrong, because I want better outcomes, and I won't know I'm doing it wrong unless you tell me I'm doing it wrong. You don't do stuff wrong, so,
Yeah.
but please tell me.
I appreciate that. But yeah, it's, I mean, we're not all going to solve this, right? Like, this is not a, Mississippi miracle type thing, right? Like, this is a changing a culture one person at a time, instant by instance. And it's that piece, it's keeping each other accountable on these things, it's being honest in the room, and it's calling out people that are doing the building things, right? And making them feel like that's a confidence. So if one person does something big and the person next to him is on that edge, that person feels more comfortable in that next one to go bigger. Because we need these things, all these other things that we're talking about today on economic development, workforce, we need bigger ideas, and we need a lot more people feeling comfortable. So Ned, I appreciate, Ned is the OG of talking very honestly in meetings. It is also one of the inspirations of doing this. So appreciate all your leadership, and appreciate everyone listening to our ranting for 15 minutes.
Thanks a lot.